Chapter 8, Ituietude's Journey. I sat at the table eating an apple as I watched my friend and the pretty scientist walk laughing through the garden. Suddenly I sensed the presence of someone behind me. I turned around. It was Sigund. His expression was serious. Esser, I know the scientist Ituietude is here. The high priestess Miram wishes to see her at once. I led him through the garden. I let out a caw to catch Oron's and Ituietude's attention. The couple appeared happy as they strode towards us. I couldn't help but notice Oron holding her hand. He was still beaming as he greeted Sigund. Sigund, what brings you here? Sigund looked gravely at Ituietude. I have come to bring Ituietude to Miram. Oron, surprised by the statement, looked at Ituietude. It seemed she knew what this was all about. She didn't even ask why. She just gathered her things. Oron couldn't imagine what could be so important. He was having such a delightful evening. He thought she was too. But now she suddenly was leaving him. I'm sorry, Oron. I must go. She turned and without another word left with Sigund. Oron forlornly stared off in the direction they exited. Half to himself and half to me, he said, what could it be that Miram calls for her so late? The happiness he had felt just a few minutes before had disappeared. He couldn't understand it. Why did she have to go? He walked back into the house looking rejected. I felt sorry for my friend, but my thoughts were on Miram. I walked over to the bridge and looked at my reflection. I studied my new arms. I was pleased with what I saw. I thought of Miram and how I wished that it had been for me that she had called. For a few minutes I fantasized myself being all man and the high priestess Miram calling for me. I imagined the two of us together as man and woman. I gave a great sigh and returned to reality, my bird face staring back at me from the stream below. Sigund led Ituietude through the temple tunnel, but this time she passed the door to the Temple of Wisdom. She knew this meeting had something to do with what she discovered this afternoon in her past life. What could be so urgent? As she walked up the steps to the main floor of the Temple of Light, she caught her breath as the magnificence of the chamber unfolded before her. Across the room, next to the glittering fountain of crystal, was Miram and a strangely attired man. Her heart began to beat faster as she approached him. She could not take her eyes off of Quetzal. There was something compelling her to look at him. His eyes seemed to bore right through her. She looked at Miram. What is it? What has happened? First, I would like to introduce you to Commander Quetzal from the planet ROA. He extended his hand to her, his eyes still penetrating through her. You may call me Quetzal. He could see the disbelief in Ituietude's eyes. Miram has explained to me about the work you are involved in. She was still caught on Miram's introduction. She couldn't believe her ears. I'm sorry, I'm a little taken back by all this. You are really from another planet? Quetzal smiled. He had a warm, friendly smile, despite the eyes that seemed to reach further than the surface of her body. She couldn't quite believe that Quetzal was from another world, but there was something different about him. She didn't fear him. On the contrary, he emanated warmth and love, and his eyes were different, knowing. I think our pragmatic friend would like a little more proof before we get down to business. Before Ituietude could say another word, Quetzal pressed the jewel on his belt, and both he and Ituietude dematerialized before Miram and Sigund's eyes. They materialized aboard the Aran reconnaissance ship. To her surprise, she was now wearing a suit like the others on the ship. She was overwhelmed by the demonstration. When she finally got her bearings, she asked, How did you do that? Nera, one of the pilots on the ship, approached Ituietude. To Ituietude, she appeared as any human. She was pretty, with long blonde hair which protruded from her skull cap. Apparently, because of her rank, there were no projectiles like the pointy projectiles on Quetzal's skull cap. She extended her hand to Ituietude. Hello, my name is Nera. I am one of the pilots of the ship. She pointed to a man sitting behind a monitor screen. He also appeared no different than any other person she had ever met. The only thing was their eyes. They all had those piercing eyes. Avalon transported you and Commander Quetzal by reorganization of your molecules, which were then picked up by our hyperdimensional transport beam. Ituietude looked around the small ship. The diameter was probably no more than 40 feet, and the material it was constructed of was metallic. It appeared very light, unlike any material she'd ever seen. As she glanced around, she was spellbound by a most incredible sight. Space. She walked closer to the large window which stretched across the front of the craft. She was amazed by what she was seeing. The darkness which stretched before her was dotted with lights. She could not believe her eyes. Where am I? Avalon got up and answered her question. We are presently stationed in your galaxy. He pointed out the window at a cloud-covered planet nearby. That is your planet Terra. Ituietude gasped. Amazing. The experience surpassed anything in her entire career. She felt as though she could be dreaming this. It was more than anyone at ATLATIA could imagine. Despite their technology, this transcended any inkling of suppositions that were made of their universe. Quetzal interrupted her thoughts. Avalon, show her what is happening to her Earth. Ituietude followed Quetzal and Avalon back to his monitor. He pressed some knobs on a huge panel of lights. On the monitor screen before him, some very sophisticated graphs appeared on the screen. Quetzal explained, "These are copies of explosions that took place earlier in your evening in ATLATIA. They were nuclear explosions." "That's impossible. All testings have been terminated. It must be something else." "I assure you, this equipment is quite sophisticated by your standards and can determine the extent and the source of these explosions. They are indeed from a nuclear source and of a dangerous degree." Ituietude stared at the graph in disbelief. Quetzal directed Avalon. "Switch it to current display." The graph changed. The lines on the graphs were static, like indicating activity within the Earth. Avalon looked back at her. "This is what is happening to your planet now." Ituietude was confused. Those lines, although foreign to her, conveyed all the signals of a disturbance, if indeed they were monitoring the activity within the Earth's crust. "What is it?" "Your Earth is cleansing itself of these pollutants," Quetzal explained. "However, if these tests continue, the planet's cleansing process may totally annihilate your world." Avalon switched the screen again. A scene of volcanoes began to sputter. Gigantic tides and earthquakes flashed onto the screen. "These are already taking place on your planet. If the tests continue, the reaction shall multiply, which would endanger your entire existence." Ituietude was shocked. She had no idea that these experiments would affect the Earth like this. "What can I do?" "You must find out who is setting off these explosions and stop them," Quetzal emphatically told her. "You must stop the launch." He pointed out the window at her planet. "If you should send one of your airships through the stratosphere of your planet, you shall puncture it, and all the water in those clouds shall flood the Earth." His words sent fear through her body. How could they have been so ignorant? It seemed that even she had become caught up in the sons of Belial's excitement of technology, with no regard to the consequences it may produce. She couldn't understand it. She knew she had to do something, but it wasn't going to be easy, not with Patelin in charge. That night, as Ituietude lay in her bed, she thought about all that had happened to her that day. It appeared as though she had a major responsibility to her country, to the world, and to herself. Patelin was not an easy man to deal with, especially when what you were going to do would contradict him. She was sure that after what she had seen, he had gone ahead with plans to construct other nuclear centers besides the ones at Onai. It really wasn't surprising that he had gone over King Atlan's head to pursue his own selfish goals. She knew that even with the information she had gained on the errant ship, she would never be able to prove to Patelin and the dangers he was creating. How could she stop him? She had to find out now. The next day in the laboratory, Ituietude took her station next to Helm. As they worked, she nervously looked about the room. After much deliberation, she said, "Do you believe that this airship will proceed as planned?" Helen looked at her, startled. "What do you mean?" She tried to be elliptic in her remarks as she continued her work. "I'm not sure the fire crystal has the power needed to defy the pull of gravity. It may fail." Helen looked at her as if he thought she was crazy. "The fire crystal has all the power it needs. If for whatever reason it should fail, perhaps we'll try nuclear energy." He continued his work. Perhaps. She took a big chance with what she was about to ask. All she wanted was a reaction from Helen, to know if he too was involved with Patelin. "Helen, have the nuclear testings been terminated?" There it was. The reaction she feared. His eyes bulged and his lips twitched a little. It was all over his face. His tone suggested his paranoia. "You know, the council has forbid further testing." She returned to her work and said, as if she had forgotten, "Yes, that's right." However, Helen was not stupid. She had triggered something inside him, and he didn't trust her. Later, when she got up to do some work in the other room, he got up and walked over to Patelin, who was busy giving instructions to another scientist. Patelin could tell from Helen's face that it was important. He got rid of the other scientist and took Helen aside. "What is it? You look as though you will burst." Helen looked around in trepidation, making sure that nobody could overhear his conversation. He whispered, "Patelin, Ituietude asked me if the nuclear testing had been terminated." What made her ask that? Patelin seemed more annoyed than alarmed. "She knows the council forbid it." "I don't know." Ituietude suddenly appeared behind them. Helen stopped talking and nudged Patelin to alert him of her presence. She approached them coyly. "You all look so serious. What is wrong?" Patelin smiled reassuringly. "Nothing really. A rumor is all." "About what?" He laughed nervously. "The children of the Law of One are having a meeting tonight. Apparently they think the world is coming to an end or something preposterous." Ituietude eyed him suspiciously, thinking of what she had just learned. "Really?" Helen laughed. "Yes. What will they think of next?" Ituietude decided to test out Patelin. "By the way, is all going as planned with the launch?" "Yes." He looked directly into her eyes, trying to see if he also should be alarmed, as Helen indicated. "Why? Shouldn't it?" She didn't dare approach him further on the subject. Not then. He had always intimidated her a little, and the way he looked at her now made her uneasy. "Just checking." After she walked away, Patelin whispered to Helen, "I don't trust her. Something is going on. Keep an eye on her at all times."